What's up, y'all? It's B-Dougie, and I have been working on this Next.js project that's been integrating the Zora protocol with the graph, specifically the subgraph that I've been able to enable and have display on my site. It's been pretty straightforward, and I wanted to talk about that experience, but I also want to take a step back and talk about some of the things that were slow and maybe could use some improvement. Now, this video is going to be sort of going back and talking about some things I had to sort of skate by. Now, with YouTube, everything's about watch time, and I was really focused on making sure we got to the app and building as fast as possible. So I had to skip over a couple things like caching and IPFS. I explained IPFS and also Fleek very briefly in the last couple of videos, but I wanted to take some time to actually talk about what this is and why it's necessary with Web3. Now, in normal situations, in a modern web app, we'd probably end up using something like a Cloudflare or an S3 to upload images. With the blockchain app, I did focus on NFTs and how IPFS, which I didn't even break down this. So IPFS stands for Interplanetary File Storage, which is a mouthful. With S3, it's all about location-based addressing. So you have the URL, it's based on that location. With IPFS, it's about content-based addressing. It can come from me, it can come from my neighbor, it comes from someone else on the protocol who has access to the image. And what's cool about this is that it's decentralized. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but IPFS took a lot of inspiration from tools like Git. So with Git, now if I clone my Git repository from my Git provider, I have a version of that, my coworker has a version of that, my contributor has a version of that, the PM has a version of that, they all have it on their own machine. And we're all validating that we all have the latest version by having a main branch. Now with IPFS, it is very similar, where each version, so if I upload an image of myself and then I decide to change the image and upload a second image of myself, maybe with a mustache, then that image itself will be version 2. Now that version is always going to be pointed to the content address. So we'll always get the latest and greatest version, but we all validate based on what's happening on Web3 or the blockchain. So with this content-based addressing and the power of Web3, everybody within the network now can validate that we have the actual correct image. For example, and this is completely hypothetical, perhaps you downloaded a video, and this video was perhaps a movie, and this movie was High School Musical 3. There is no confirmation that when you download that video off of BitTorrent, that video itself is High School Musical 3 until you open it and play it. So back in the day when I used to, back in the day when folks used to download stuff from BitTorrent or heavily get stuff that was DRM blocked, which I highly recommend, don't do this. Purchase all your content. Support creators. We all want to get paid. But what I'm getting at is, now if I go to download that on another computer, it is always going to be that image. And that's sort of the power where NFTs come into play. If I mint an NFT based on an IPFS link, I can always be linked as the creator of this NFT. So if anybody else wants to download it, I get credit for them downloading that original NFT. I bring all this up because with the content-based hashing, I think it's great because you get a network and you sort of get the illusion of a CDN. But the thing I did find out as I was working with NFTs directly and with images specifically and sort of running my NFT dashboard using Next.js is that despite using Next Image and despite using IPFS, the images were still loading pretty slow. And that's because that all the optimizations of IPFS are not built in, like similar to S3 or with Cloudinary. Every time I'd refresh and reload images on my NFT dashboard, it would update those versions on Cloudinary if there were any changes. So if there were any new images that showed up in my NFT dashboard, perhaps other people had minted stuff, and I would get a reference version of the NFT loaded on my dashboard. And this was great at first with Cloudinary because I was able to build my own caching strategy and make sure that I was getting the latest and greatest images at that time, and if there were any changes, it could upload to the Cloudinary, and then it would update that and validate the cache. Now, I did this, and it got really complicated, and I could not confirm if I was going to hit a paid tier of Cloudinary, so I got a little concerned as I was just trying to build a sort of web series. In my search, I noticed when I was looking on Foundation and Zora, they were both using a tool which is ImageX, and ImageX is very similar to Cloudinary. I didn't actually go through building an entire strategy with ImageX, but I did note that the strategy is needed. So ImageX, Cloudinary, they're both Web2 technologies. They're technologies to improve caching of images and give you the most optimized image at that time that you're referencing the site. That is eye-opening because when I actually looked into the images I was uploading, quite a few of those images were over 5 to 8 megabytes. These are very large images. These are artworks. And the artists that are minting these NFTs are not thinking about web performance and thinking about what 5 megabytes is going to look like on a mobile phone on 2G or 3G. And that's concerning. So one thing I would probably, I think probably the biggest thing you probably need to be concerned of if you go and try to produce this project yourself or produce a similar project with NFTs is the fact that performance is not top of mind when it comes to rendering artwork. The solution I eventually came up to was the Cloudflare IPFS CDN. Now, this is the project I found on Product Hunt just from searching to see if anybody else had solved the problem. I jumped into the Graph forums as well and asked this question, as well as the Graph Discord, and this is where it led me to. So, highly recommend this strategy. I'm doing a very naive approach, as you can see in this code. I'm simply just doing a find and replace to the IPFS links. And instead of going to IPFS, I'm actually going directly to Cloudflare CDN, and they've done the work of caching all this stuff. So as I mentioned, I was going through and uploading all this to Cloudinary, getting a cached version of that, and then bringing that back and rendering that on the screen. Instead of doing all that work myself and worrying about the size of the images, Cloudflare is doing that for me. I'm taking a little bit of control away from my project, but with the benefit of actually getting this thing to render. And if you're at all interested in seeing the next version of the series, I would love to go the next step of actually connecting a MetaMask wallet to the project and actually minting and purchasing NFTs. Hopefully all this fake, we're going to use this in a staging environment. But if you're interested in seeing that, let me know below, and I will go ahead and start working on that content. And I'll see you in the next one.